country where I come from, the truth is an irony. Just like animal farm, justice mean inequity. So who go say the truth? Who go say the truth? Christian can say silence, Islamic leaders silence, kings and queens silence, traditional leaders silence. So who go say the truth? We are the workers of composite call. Now by area, why no better? We are the workers of composite call. One guy's out here, why no better? Who go say the truth? Who go say the truth? Oh, he need it now, see what I see so. Now your friend on a night come at them. Only baby obeka na sembia. So I want one obet you too. Everybody was afraid. And when Tina to my cottage again nine. Once my boy don't be one and but who go tell the truth? Nanai or say me. Nanso bien person beka wasam because everybody is afraid. Anya safwe muayini. Akuku trofo nyina dalima. Enti who go say the truth? Obiaja konson so to croach your mansa to me bia kakobrafo. Efo anyina ye. Efo when you know yet. Na so kutrata down na so be dia back or why no keke. I fene for be man mo pia for efo ne cross on my mo. Hanya safwe mo ayini. Akuku trofo nyina dalima. And who go say the truth? Abaya di bote chino. Yedi bi bebo nyande bi Kachisa would your mouth pipinuma Would your mind never shine my frafonsa But who go tell the truth? DUC silence Even journalists silence So then who go say the truth? Right is right Wrong is wrong, no matter how you justify. You say you wanna get rid of corruption. Someone want to help you, now the person become your target. Jobless, no they mean senseless. Poverty, no they mean useless. One day, then go resist.
Hello, good evening, and welcome to yet another edition of your favorite Monday evening socio-political discussion live on Today Ghana News TV, where every Monday evening we do well to bring you the best social or political discussion and sometimes economic and social as well. And as we see, all these things are interconnected. And this evening, as usual, we are coming to you with another yet exciting edition of your favorite discussion on radio, on TV, on your favorite social media, your social media sites. Now, for those of you who are listening to us or watching us from Ghana, and even those of you who are not joining us from Ghana, but who have vested interest in Ghana, you would have noticed that over the past 3 years or more, the most topical and most recurring issue in Ghana has been the discussion of the economy. Every now and again, that discussion it gets linked to other aspects of the economy. but then again, it keeps bouncing back over and over again. There is little wonder, therefore, that this year in Ghana, which is an election year, all the independent surveys that have been conducted in Ghana have come out with one resounding issue, which is the fact that these elections would be based on one thing at the top of the minds of all electorates and voters, which is the issue of the economy. To this extent and to this regard, we have taken vested interest in the economy, and this evening we want to delve into the economy much further, discuss it at some length, and try to see what issues we can tease out of the state of Ghana's economy. But more importantly, not talk about the past or the present, even though we'll be saying a little bit about that, but focus mostly on the future and what can be done about the state of Ghana's economy. And as we always say on this show, on this program, that we on this show, most often than not, do not have the answers to the many questions that surround the topics that we need to discuss or the topics that we discuss. And the best that we can do is to usually bring people who are very, very knowledgeable, people who are on top of the issues or the topics to be discussed, so that they can help you to understand and to resolve the questions that bother you, and especially this year as you prepare to cast your vote only a few weeks from now. And to this extent, today we are being joined by well, in Ghana, we say that we are being joined by a big fish. A big fish to the extent that he is one of the topmost persons that we refer to on matters of the economy in previous times and in current times, and I'm sure that we are going to be referring to him in future. He is none other than Dr. Nii Moi Thompson. Dr. Nii Moi Thompson is a renowned economist. He formerly, in his previous life, he was an economic advisor to President His Excellency John Dramani Mahama, and he was also the Director General of the National Development Planning Commission, I guess. And then also in recent times, he is also, but in his previous life, he was also very instrumental in the preparation of the 40-year National Development Plan of Ghana. And I think in recent times, he has also been very instrumental in the formulation of the key policy on the economy of the major political party, opposition political party in Ghana, which is the NDC, which policy is the 24-hour economy. Dr. Thompson, welcome to MyView Show here on Today Ghana News TV.
Thank you very much for having me. I'm glad to be here.
No, thank you for joining us, and we are happy to have you. On our show, we usually like to pride ourselves as the #1 show that care, first of all, about our guests, because it is only when they are hale and happy that they can contribute very well to the show. To that extent, how are you faring?
I'm doing pretty well, actually. I'm currently in South Africa, and we're on the early days of summer, and so it's warm, relatively warm, and therefore bearable. You know, coming from Ghana.
Lucky you.
Yeah. Oh yeah, it's cold on your end. Yeah, I just got back from Italy, actually. Yeah, and it was quite an interesting experience. Yeah. You guys are supposed in the autumn also, right? So yeah.
No, we're actually in winter.
Oh, you are in winter already? Okay,
yeah.
Okay.
And the weather is not as friendly as where you are. But we are happy to see that you are doing well, and to know that you are quite you are doing quite well. It's always a pleasure to hear you speak, especially on matters of the economy, where your expertise lie and where you have a lot of knowledge and experience to share. before we go on, we know about how you are doing health-wise. You are in South Africa now, but we would also want to find out how is your personal economy. Let's relate that to the economy of Ghana. Because for every Ghanaian who is in the diaspora, we are always linked to Ghana in one way or the other. And to that extent, the occurrences in Ghana affect the personal economies of people, no matter where they are in the world. So viewing it in that perspective, from that perspective, how would you describe your personal economy? And if you like, I'll link it to the economy of Ghana. Please unmute yourself.
Sure. It's my personal situation is very much linked to what is going on back in Ghana, of course, either directly or indirectly. I just got back from Ghana, I believe in June, during which I experienced the hardships that everyone keeps talking about. It's one thing to read it on social media. It's another thing to actually experience it, where prices are rising at a very rapid rate. There's a visible deterioration in the standards of living and even infrastructure. You can tell the difference, that things are falling apart, to put it bluntly, on all levels. And then if you go beyond the personal and look at the statistics, I mean, you don't even have to tell anyone the depreciation of the city. I mean, for those of us outside who send money, you might think that, well, if I send $1 now, I get 17 or whatever. But sooner or later, you have to send more because it feeds into inflation. Interest rates are high, so businesses are not really doing as well as they should. One thing we don't talk about often is the serious incidence of brain drain that's happening. I think we can compare that to what happened in the 1970s and 80s, and ultimately it will come back to haunt us. Someone might say, well, you are all outside, I'm outside and you're outside, so what's wrong with them also going abroad? There's nothing wrong with that. But we need to create the conditions such that people don't think that the only way they can get ahead in life is to travel abroad. That we need to create those local conditions. And we can't do that when we are not managing the economy well, when employment opportunities are virtually non-existent. I mean, at the end of, between the end of 2016 and now, and the end of last year, 1 million more people have been added to the unemployment ranks. That's not a very good thing. It affects the economy in so many ways, because if people are not earning money, it means they are not spending. And if they are not spending, it means we can't collect revenue for development. If they're not being employed, it means businesses are not making profits. And therefore, we can't collect revenue for development. So it becomes a cycle, which is then aggravated by, the severe incidence of corruption of the scale that we haven't seen in ages, if ever at all. So all these things come together to affect our relatives back home. And even for those of us outside, even if temporarily, we also do feel it, because you have to keep sending more and more than you did before, even though they are getting more cities, but then too, the inflation rate is going up. So, yeah.
Well, I mean, it's I think on the at a general level, what you said is something that lots of people can relate to, especially lots of people in the diaspora can relate to, because what a remittance of 10 euros could do years ago cannot do this year, which only means that you need to remit more. So the exchange rate might be higher, but then it only means that you need to send more in order for to be able to make those cover the same expenses that you need to cover back in Ghana. But one thing that has always come up for discussion anytime that the economy is brought up has always been the pushback from the managers of the economy right now. The pushback is always to the effect that if you look at the management tenure of the economy, you can broadly divide it into three parts. The first part, which was the first administration, they say did quite well, and the indicators were quite good. Everything pointed in the upward direction, and everything was fine. The second part is where they say that things didn't seem quite good, and that they attribute to global pandemic that happened. And of course, they are not the only ones talking about it. In the current U.S. Elections, came up quite clearly. The Democrats campaigned on the fact that they suffered this global pandemic that caused the economic downturn. And one other thing that is talked about in Ghana has been the Russia-Ukraine war. And of course, but the managers of Ghana economy see that these days, these seem to have eased up a little. And because of the interventions that they've managed to put in place, things have come together. And if you look at the indicators right now, they may not be as good as the first quarter of their administration, but everything seems to be pointing up. That seemed to be, a good account of their stewardship, not so?
Not at all, not at all. First of all, we are not the only country that was affected by COVID. It was a global phenomenon, just a handful of countries that probably escaped it. But everybody was affected by it. And there are countries that were affected even more severely than Ghana, such as South Africa, which are doing much better than Ghana now. In South Africa, where I am now, the inflation rate is, around 3.8%, compared to Ghana, where it's 22%. The interest rate, the central bank rate, is 8% in South Africa, is 27% in Ghana. So it's false that COVID is the reason why we're in the mess that we are. Anyone who follows or followed their stewardship from the get-go, from the very beginning, would have realized that the crisis actually began long before COVID. And in some respects, COVID actually saved, or at least brought in some money, which created its own orgy of corruption on the side. But I would like to share with you, and you can verify this on the internet, the Anas video that became famous with Kwesi Nyantakyi getting ensnared in that. There's a line in there in which Kwesi Nyantakyi says, and he was talking about the payment of contractors. This was 2018. He says, as for the NDC contractors, for them, their monies will rot. So on the basis of this and other issues, I actually wrote an article later on, right around the same time. I wrote an article called The Bible, the Budget, and Bob Marley. And in that article, I quoted, the reason I brought in Bob Marley is because of his famous song, Small Axe. If you're a big tree and then the pit you dig, you fall in and so forth and so on. So they then began to put a blanket freeze on payments to contractors. And this is where the problem started. They thought they were doing, quote unquote, NDC contractors. But what happened as a result of that was that the construction sector, since it is dominated by the government, started shrinking long before COVID. So that by the end of 2019, the construction sector had actually declined. It has shrunk by 4%. This was before COVID. It has shrunk, and in fact, it was shrinking steadily, and it culminated in a 4% decline. There's another sector of water and sewage, which also declined by 4%. And then other sectors, some of them slowed down, but they didn't decline as such in terms of negative growth, but they slowed down drastically. So the economy from the very beginning was on the path to crisis. And at the same time, they also implemented the botched banking sector, quote unquote, reforms, which actually decimated, it destroyed a substantial part of the financial sector. And as you know, financial sector provides the oxygen for an economy. So if you destroy it, you are basically starving the economy of the necessary oxygen. So here you are decimating the basis of your financial sector. And I'm not saying that we didn't require reforms. Yes, we did. But it became an exercise in vengeance and vindictiveness, because some of the banks that were spared clearly were not sustainable. And some of the banks that were destroyed, such as Indum's Bank, were actually playing a very key role in economic development in Ghana. Indum had the largest bank in Ghana in terms of presence around the country. So any sensible human being will think about the implications for the larger economy, even if they had management problems, governance issues in the bank. You think about the impact on the economy, but they went ahead and destroyed everything. They thought they were doing Kwesindum, but eventually they actually ended up bringing the economy down. So all these things were happening. Indeed, in November 2019, the Minister of Finance went to Parliament to present the 2020 budget, in which he said that the situation was so bad that he was expecting economic growth from 2020 onwards to decline, to slow down from 20. This was before the world even heard of COVID. So let's not buy into this myth that we are having these problems because of COVID. The problems are the result of vindictiveness and, of course, economic mismanagement. The mismanagement is also manifested in other ways. In 4 years, they borrowed through Eurobonds $11 billion in 4 years. That's more than any government in our history has ever borrowed in such a relatively short time, 4 years. And they kept going to Parliament and saying, well, they were borrowing for liability management and infrastructure. And so the problem is that we have absolutely nothing to show for the $11 billion. Now, you may not have heard me talk about the debt levels have increased and so forth and so on. I don't play debt politics because I know debt is good. It's bad when you misuse it. And that's where the problem is. What happened to the $11 billion? This is something that we have to answer sooner rather than later. Someone has to. I remember when you sent me the invitation, and I told you I would accept it because you had Burning Spear on there. Someone got to pay. That's from one of the songs. I think Jago rate. Someone has to $11 billion, man. And you can't account for it. There's no infrastructure to speak of. Emerging from that, debt management, of course, fell through the cracks. And so now we are in a financial crisis to the extent where they have taken other people's savings to try and save themselves. There's something so fundamentally wrong. So blaming it on COVID or the Ukraine war are the two whipping boys that they like to use. Don't forget that in 2022, when Russia invaded Ukraine and it disrupted world trade, all visionary and current leaders decided to take measures to address the impact for the people, except in Ghana, where the president and his cousin, the finance minister, were rather taunting Ghanaians that no matter what you do, we are going to commission the cathedral, National Cathedral, on 6th August 2024. That's what they were doing in 2022. When other leaders were working in the interests of their people, this president and his cousin were rather boasting and taunting us, sticking their tongues out at us, that no matter what you do, no matter what you do, we will build a cathedral. And now look at the disgrace that is created for us. And then they have the nerve to go out and then take other people's savings to make up for the mess that they created. They themselves have been insulated. Don't forget, the president of Ghana does not even pay taxes by law. He's the only citizen who's exempted from paying taxes. And he's exempted from this mess that he's created. The finance minister, if you read Manasseh Zuri's book, his company, Data Bank, made around $100,000 in 27 years on Eurobonds, $100,000 over 27 years. And yet, within the time that he became a minister, they made over $1 million, and then an additional $8 million in domestic bonds. So about $9 million in about 4 years. So they seem to have done quite well. If you go through the Auditor General's report on the COVID expenditures, you see there's a table in there on the insurance companies that profited from COVID. his insurance company, or at least the one that he's affiliated with and his relatives sit on the board, that's Enterprise Insurance, is right there at the top. So don't listen to this lie that we are suffering because of COVID. Some of them profited, they became dollar millionaires from COVID. And the rest of the public then became impoverished. So don't buy into that. I don't buy into that at all.
All right. Let's deal with this last bit on the current and then maybe the past, and then we can move forward to the future. On infrastructure, you mentioned a borrowing of $5 billion.
No, $11 billion.
$11 billion.
Yeah, in Eurobonds. And part of it was supposed to be used for infrastructure. Yes.
If you hear the government communicate this, they tell you that that money effectively was used for infrastructure. And they tell you that between independence and now, no government have constructed road projects to the scale that they have. And indeed, this may not fall squarely under, infrastructure is infrastructure. Mm-hmm. We are told that from tomorrow, the president is going to be commissioning lots of projects. We have the Agenda 111 hospitals. They say they are going to commission about 40 of them. I hear tomorrow the president is going to commission an interchange at the Flower Pot. They say they've improved the infrastructure in the schools and the how do you call that? School projects that they've implemented. So, in all intents and purposes, the pointers seem to be the fact that the borrowed money, most of it went into infrastructure. Is that not enough? Can that not suffice for a good use of the resources or the borrowings that they have done?
Well, there will always be some infrastructure development. Even in our worst periods, in the 1970s and 80s, roads were built and hospitals were built and so forth. And so it's not a big deal that they are building some roads, even those that they inherited from President Mahama. I usually don't like making those, indulging in those, that kind of nitpicking. Yes, there will always be some of that. But the question is the infrastructure that they are boasting of, does it reflect the massive amounts of monies and loans that they've taken ostensibly for infrastructure? And the obvious answer is no. And I can tell you that, for instance, if you go through the budgets and you do the necessary calculations, you see that infrastructure spending under this government has fallen short of budget by about 10% every year since they came into office. About 10%.
Sorry, Doc. When you say falling short of budget, what do you mean? Like, can you?
It means that yes. So let's say they budgeted 100 million for it, and they on average they only spend 90 million on that. So it was 10 million less on average every year. So the money did not even meet those objectives. And again, it's sad because despite all the fancy statements and promises they made, Parliament, for some reason, did not exercise the necessary oversight to verify that is it even true what they are telling us, that all this money that they are borrowing breathlessly was in fact being used for quote unquote liability management. Basically, when they say liability management, they mean our debt. Were they using it for liability management? Were they using it for infrastructure? If Parliament had done its work, it would have realized that in some instances, at least in one instance that I verified in 2018, the infrastructure budget was actually about 25% lower than what they claimed, even though they said that they have borrowed for infrastructure. So the long and short of it is that there will always be some infrastructure development occurring. even at at the lowest point in our national life. But the question is, given the amount of money you've borrowed, is this enough? Some of it, like the interchange that you're referring to, the money was secured by President Mahama before he even left office. So that doesn't even fall under this round of infrastructure that the borrowing that they're talking about. Some of the money had already been procured. So yes, I see those things there, but if you've been to Ghana, you see the palpable decay in fiscal infrastructure. The railways, of course, are gone. Pretty much, they went and bought some Kwekwanansi train a while back, and they claimed that it was involved in an accident. Of course, we never heard anything. The roads are fiscally deteriorated. I mean, people are always demonstrating in different communities across the country that their roads are so bad, and that unless government fixes them, they won't vote. And just to place things in a context, Tanzania, for example, is building 2,000 kilometers of rail with worth $10 billion US dollars. 2,000 kilometers of rail for $10 billion US dollars. We had $11 billion and we don't even have an inch of rail or any reasonable infrastructure. We could have, for $11 billion, we could have at least put up 1,000 kilometers of rail around Ghana. That would reduce the travel time from Accra to Kumasi by, let's say, an hour and a half in modern train with the business class, with maybe sipping juice between Accra and Kumasi. And before you know, in an hour and a half, you are there. You attend a conference. You get back. I was born and raised in Kumasi. So I remember the good old days of Kumasi when we had something called Sleeper. My sister was a businesswoman. She used to travel from Kumasi to Takoradi at night to go and distribute some of her products to her clients in Takoradi. In the morning, she would arrive there, do the distribution, do some shopping, take the following night train back to Kumasi, and business was done. This is how good things were. We've lost that opportunity, and all this money, we could have used just half of that. Now, you mentioned the long-term national development plan, the 40-year national development plan. In that plan, we actually have 4 plans for metro rail, light metro rail. In Accra, there was even going to be an underground, what we call subways in the US or tube in Europe. There were going to be an underground portion of the light rail in Kumasi, I think that stretched from Tema to parts of Accra. The second one was going to be in Kumasi. The third one was going to be in Sekondi Takoradi. And the fourth one was going to be in Tamale. We had 4. We left 4 of them. They could have used half of this $11 billion to at least do the first half, the first 2, Accra and Tema. Accra and Kumasi, I'm sorry. And then we do the second phase later. None of these, no one seems to know. This is one of the biggest mysteries of our economy that we'll have to resolve in the future. What happened to the $11 billion? It's just not visible. We don't see the results of it. Countries are doing far less. I mentioned Tanzania using $10 billion to build 2,000 kilometers of road. Japan had the equivalent of about $9 billion in today's prices from the World Bank in the 1950s and 60s. And it used that to develop 15 different major infrastructure and industrial policy initiatives, including Japan, Mitsubishi, power plants, highways, $9 billion. We still don't have anything. As I speak with you, doomsday is staring us in the face. So, no, I don't buy the story that we are in this mess because of COVID or Ukraine. We are in it because of mismanagement and massive, massive, massive corruption, as we've seen with ministers who didn't even know that someone stole $1 million from them. Just imagine. You live in your house and someone steadily steals $1 million and you're not even aware. That means you are swimming in money. How much more is out there? You see. Man, I'm laughing, but it's sad. I'm laughing, but it's sad. We're paying the price for it.
Dr. Thompson, most of the things that you talk about now, I mean, you can lay them squarely. I mean, apart from the blatant corruption and thievery or graft of public resources, some of it can be traced down to inefficiency in the government sector or the entire system in Ghana in general. You recently authored an article in which you talk about the weaknesses in payment planning that the World Bank and the IMF refer to in one of their recent reports on Ghana. And you talked about the necessity to iron this out or tidy this. Do you think that this is feasible? Especially, I mean, when we talk about payments in general, considering the fact that in recent times, in the just past NDC government, the government spent a lot of money and resources trying to implement what was known as the single spine salary structure that was meant to realign the payments in the public sector and to make the government sector efficient one way or the other. Do you think that maybe we have flogged this issue of government efficiency for so long, and that maybe it's just not something that we can wrap our heads around and something that we are up to, and that's something that is probably this is something that is beyond us, and we may just have to learn to live with it? What do you think about that?
No, to the contrary, we cannot afford to live with it. It will be, it will drive us further down the rabbit hole. And a single spine was way back. This was President Kufuor's legacy to President Mills when he was leaving. So that carried over. But overall, yes, we have serious problems of managing the public sector. There's massive endemic inefficiency in the public sector. And we need to fix that. No country in the world has been able to develop without first fixing the public sector and making it efficient and responsive to the needs of the public. You keep the private sector as the engine of growth and the rest of it. Ultimately, you require an efficient government to be able to run an efficient private sector. We don't have that in Ghana. And this is what pains me, the propaganda, digitization or digitalization, which is now the buzzword. Everything, everywhere you go, we are digitized and so forth. But you go to Ghana and you experience that, you ask yourself, what are these people talking about? The level of digitization in Ghana is so low and unreliable that you wonder what all the propaganda is. Here in South Africa, when I go to the shop or do whatever, I simply use my phone. They have what they call contactless payment. I just swipe it. I don't even touch anything on my phone, and I've made my payment. I'm gone. Anywhere you can buy something for R1 and you can use that. Go to Ghana and try buying petrol, for example. They'll give you a piece of paper with a telephone number on it. That's for Momo. And then they tell you that you have to add commission to it. And then you have to go to Momo and pay and all that. Even, oh man, I went to renew my driver's license. Of course, the Goro boys were there all over the place. Despite all the noise about digitization, I still had to go outside and make a photocopy of the front and back of my driver's license before I had to go in the queue. This is 2024. Everywhere, the quality of ICT has gone down. You can Google the fastest countries with the fastest internet in Africa. Rwanda is at the top. Ghana is not even in the top 10. So these are all infrastructure. Infrastructure is not just about roads or interchanges, but ICT infrastructure now is like the nerve center of any economy. So if that is not functioning, a lot of things aren't going to function properly. You need, especially in the area of retail, where these days you should be able to order anything on your phone and have that delivered. But it's taking forever to even get through, and the lines are so slow, they are dropping and so forth and so on. You're harming yourself. So ultimately, yes, we need a very efficient government. In fact, it's one of our weakest points in government, in governance and development. So we need to work on that. When I took over NDPC as Director General, one thing I hate to see in any government office in Ghana is television sets and people are watching TV in office. That's what tells you that these people in Ghana, we are not serious. Because there are certain offices you could walk in there and go straight to the minister's office and no one would even question you because everybody is watching television. There was a time I went to a minister's office, they had this soft porn on around mid-morning. They had soft porn there in the reception area. Another minister's office, they had two lions having sex. Office hours, and people were watching. So when I took over, when I went to NDPC, they had just bought 2 television sets that they were going to install, one in my office and in the office of the chairman, Professor Botry of blessed memory. And I said, no way you're going to install any television sets here. You are paid to work, not to watch television. So I spoke with Professor Botry, and he agreed with me. He said, Nii Moi, I don't even have time to come and sit here and watch. At home, I don't watch. So why are they buying it? And this is the problem throughout the country where people are being paid. They're either watching TV or they're on social media. I went to Registrar General's office once, and there was a lady who was serving the customers with one hand, and the other hand was on her phone doing social. There's no way we are going to develop this kind of thing. You've been to the American Embassy in Accra, I hope. When the workers check in, their phones are checked in the back. And they stay there in the work and they earn the money that they are paid every month. I was just addressing a group on a platform yesterday about labor productivity in Ghana versus labor productivity in the US, which is the world standard. And this is another reason why a lot of Ghanaians are leaving Ghana. Now, labor productivity in the US is $70 an hour. The average worker in the US produces $70 an hour. And so they can afford to earn the $14, $15 an hour that is the minimum wage, the federal minimum wage. In Ghana, the average worker produces $8 an hour. So how much are you going to pay them? About the minimum wage for the whole day is just around $1. So how can you survive? And most of the people in government, in fact, they produce nothing. They just sit there and they still get paid. So let's not put down the importance of public sector efficiency and productivity. It's very, very critical. It's a key complement to private sector efficiency and productivity. The two go hand in hand. And this is actually spelled out clearly in the policy document for the 24-hour economy that you referred to earlier. So we will take government efficiency very, very seriously.
Yeah. So, well, let me pose this question to you. Then we'll go for a break. Then and we'll resume. So before we go for the break, you talk about productivity in public sector. In the absence of that, what we know is that because productivity is low, revenue seems to coupled with low revenue from government.
Mm-hmm.
The country seems to have found itself in a situation whereby it's like we are living beyond our means. Yes. And the only way to cover up for that is to borrow. And over the years, what we have done is to borrow excessively. And as you mentioned previously, we reach a point where we are distressed as a country.
Mm-hmm.
Now, in the midst of all of this, His Excellency John Dramani Mahama is promising to bring some respite to the Ghanaian public when he takes over the reins of governance next year, January. And one of the ways that he plans to do this is to cut back on some taxes that he calls nuisance taxes. Talk about the betting tax, the e-levy, and what have you. Now, how do you reconcile these two positions? That the country is distressed on one hand, which means that revenue is low, revenue generation is low. And on the other hand, you are talking about, abolishing taxes, which would bring less revenue to the state. And how do you even do that with all of the other things that he promises to do, including 24-hour economy, which would involve some expenditure to some extent?
Yeah. I'm not going to use economic terms, but there's always a transition period for doing these things.
Okay.
These nuisance taxes, along with other factors, actually constrain economic growth. And when economic growth is low, your revenue yield is also low. No matter how high you raise the taxes, you either impose more taxes or you increase the rates for existing taxes. Either way, you are destroying the economy. You are constraining economic growth. And so when you remove those taxes, you then provide breathing space for businesses to function and be able to at least make profits and then pay. So that in that situation, in an ideal environment, you may even have a lower tax rate, but because the economy is growing and it therefore has a bigger base, your revenue yield would be higher, all things being equal. Now, there's the other aspect of it that when you are removing those nuisance taxes, you need to hold down expenditures. So for, let's say you reduce certain taxes and that results in, let's say, 10 million cedis in revenue. You need to be able to offset that with a corresponding cut in expenditures. And you can do that with any number of ways by simply, one, making efficient use of what you have already, or look for fat in the system, expenditures that shouldn't have taken place in the first place. They are wasteful. And there are so many of them that we've already identified. We have all sorts of people placed, for instance, in Ghanaian missions abroad that are just there. They add absolutely no value to our international trade or anything. They represent all sorts of things. So there are a number of areas for cost cutting that will go in hand with the reduction in nuisance taxes to bring relief to businesses. When businesses have their relief, and it's not just the reduction of taxes, there's a whole program to help businesses recover from the hell that they're in now, so that they'll be able to produce efficiently. They'll gain access to bigger markets. One of the promises that President Mahama has made is that he's going to personally chair an intersectoral council for accelerated growth in exports. That has never been done in Ghana before. Currently, exports are handled by one ministry, Ministry of Trade and Industry, but then exports take place from different sectors. Now, he, as the president, is going to be coordinating all these things, including even the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. When you think of exports, you don't readily think of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, but the Ministry of Foreign Affairs has a role to play in that. Currently, it's not clearly defined. It's not properly coordinated. Even activities that they promise to implement, they hardly do that because no one is coordinating that. This council that the president has promised to chair is going to put all these things together. And as president, he's the only one in a position to demand certain things from ministers and say, no, I want everyone in my office at 11 p.m. tonight. We are not going home until this issue is resolved. Only he can do that. No other minister can call his fellow ministers and say, come and let's have a meeting at 11. They say, oh, Madam, get out of here. Leave me alone. You can't say that to the president. When he calls you at 11 p.m., you show up. It calls you at 2 a.m., you have to be there. And that shows the level of seriousness. Because I like to call it the Choboy moment. This is no ordinary, it's not going to be an ordinary handing over of power. This is Choboy. We have to roll up our sleeves and put our shoulders to the wheel, as they say. It's going to be a very momentous thing, and also putting the economy on the path to transformation. Yeah, so that in a nutshell, that's what it is. He will provide tax relief, but that will be matched with efficiency and expenditures. And then over time, as the economy grows, our revenue yield should, of course, be higher. Of course, we need to make sure that we also fight corruption, because if the revenue yield is going up and the money is ending up in people's pockets, then we'll still be in the same place where we won't have the money for development. So it's a multifaceted, multi-pronged approach that we need to take.
Wonderful. Okay, so Dr. Thompson, we take a short break so that you can sip some water and wet your throat. Then we take some messages from our viewers and revert to you. Then we continue to some policy issues moving forward. So if you are watching us, you are live on Today Ghana News TV, where this evening we are talking to our guest for today, Dr. Nii Moi Thompson, who is, in his previous life, he was the advisor to His Excellency John Dramani Mahama on the economy. He was also the former Director General of the National Development Planning Commission, and he is joining us today to talk about the economy of Ghana and to also talk about the possibilities of resetting Ghana's hacked economy moving forward. So to all our viewers and listeners, those who are joining us from Sakina Information Center in Tetali, we say a very big thank you for joining us. To our listeners on High FM 3.7 in Ajunima in the Sino region, we say a very warm welcome to you and a very big thank you to you as well. To our listeners on the King's Radio, thank you to you as well. And to all our viewers on all social media platforms, on Facebook, on Twitter, on Twitch, on Instagram, on LinkedIn, and on all the platforms that you may join us. Thank you very much for joining us as always. So we take some comments from our viewers and listeners. Today we may not be able to take all of them, but we'll take a few so that we can be able to return to Dr. Thompson so that we can move on to the next segment of the show. Frempom Bafi, you say, wonderful show. I've been following Dr. Nii Moi Thompson for over 2 decades, and he has been very consistent and deep in economic matters in Ghana. Please, I think you are trying to say, ask him why he is not in the mainstream politics. You are watching from Akusi near Someya. Maybe he's in mainstream politics more than you think he is, Frempom Bafi. Nana Akron, you see, more fire, Dr. Nii. Your daughter Nana Akron, Daddy, Dad, please. Your daughter has lost your contact, please. Okay, I think this is somebody who knows Dr. Thompson personally, and maybe you try and connect very soon. Kweku Ivo, say good evening, and you're watching from Suhum in the Eastern region. Good evening to you. Please ask Dr. Thompson how the current government has messed up the economy. How sure? Please ask Dr. how sure he is that JM and his team can turn it over for good. I think if you've been watching, he's been giving you pointers as to some of the things that JM is going to do when he takes over the reins of leadership in Ghana so that he can turn things around. Jefframa TV, you say you are watching from Rara in OT region. Are we watching the next fan? I think that went too quickly. Are we watching the next finance minister of our great country? Possibly. Who knows? Thank you very much, Jefframa TV. Patience Daku. Good evening, Albert and your team. Good evening to you, Patience. You are watching from Hamburg, Germany. Dr. Thompson is really giving us some education on the economy. Thank you very much, Patience. That's why we brought him, so they can give us some education. Odoye Tema. You say we need a 2-term president like Dr. Baumia to move Ghana forward. GHC no to JDM. Thank you very much, Odoye Tema, for your comment. Ghana and Fee, you say you are watching from Bosusu in Frontier Aqua South District. Dog, we are experiencing a heavy impact of Galamsey. Please, economically, how does it affect or improve the economy? Good question, Ghana and Fee. Jumia, Jumai Richmond, you say good evening to you and your guest. May Allah bless you. Thank you very much for watching. Mavis Boateng, you say you are watching on YouTube from Lisbon in Portugal. Good evening to you, Mavis. 24-hour economy is 24-hour economy is a game changer to restore our ailing economy. But do you think that we have the competent people in government to handle the project? Thank you very much, Mavis. Kweku Adai, or Kweku Adi, you see, God bless you, Doc, for the explanation of the economy. You are watching from Amsterdam in Holland. Thank you very much, Kweku Adi. Lady Mal _2, you see, I am very much humbled by the knowledge of Dr. Thompson. I think he should be the next Mahama government. He should be in the next Mahama government to help resolve the problems of the economy. You are watching on Twitch from St. Petersburg in Russia. Please, when is he coming back to the snow? I can see a lot of people watching him now. Thank you very much, Lady Andamal. You say, when he's coming back to the show, no, there's no, sorry. Sekapa TV, you say, I am really enjoying the program tonight. The big question is, why didn't he play a major role in the last John Mahama government? You are watching from Jumapu near Koforidua. Well, if you are watching, you would know that he played a major role in the past government. Kwesi Insia, you say, good evening. Please, is the 24-hour economic policy feasible to change the unemployment rate? You are watching from Anglo Town in Koforidua. Thank you very much. Time permitting, we probably would try and see whether I can handle the 24-hour economy before we lose Doctor. NDC Diaspora Union, you see, the NDC and John Dramani and John Mahama really have the men to run the country, to turn the country around. You are watching from Amsterdam, Holland. Thank you very much, NDC Diaspora Union. Nyame boy, popular tea seller. Good evening to you. You are watching from Nkwanta in Oti. Your program is also live in Adelema Community Information Center in Tutukwene and KJB. This is very good. Thank you very much, Nyame boy, for watching. Fans TV, you say this program needs part 2. Dr. Thompson is very deep in economics. You are watching from Aflawo in Volta region. Thank you for putting a word for us. Maybe when we ask Doctor to come back, he would join us soon. Frima Oye, watching from Mount who, please, Doctor, accept my appointment. Please accept any appointment appointment of John Mahama to help restore the economy. Thank you very much, Frima Oye. Already doing the lobbying for Dr. Thompson for an appointment in the new government. The next one, maybe we take this, then we get Doctor to come back, is from Asempa Heneboachi. You say you are watching and listening from Achinhimai. Albert, you forgot to acknowledge us streaming live on a high FM. Please, I'm sorry for not acknowledging you. I will do that moving forward. Thank you very much to all our listeners. Sorry to those whose comments we are not able to read out. We would see when we have time, probably we would do that. But let's move on to the next part of the show and welcome back Dr. Nii Moi Thompson, who is joining us today to talk about the route to resetting Ghana's hard economy. Dr. Thompson, thank you for rejoining us.
Thank you. And thanks to your listeners also for the...
As you can see, there seem to be segments of listeners. Some are looking for an appointment for you. Some are already clamoring for a return to the show. And I would endorse both because on the second one, I'm not sure that we can cover all the grounds for this evening's show. We seem to running out of time, running very quickly. So we would extend the show by an additional 15 minutes if a doctor has time for us. And if we still are not able, maybe we'll try to get him back to the studio in the near future so that we can cover some grounds. On the second one, I'm not the one to make a case for a doctor. He has made a case for himself already. So if the listeners are saying it, who am I? I'm sure that the appointer knows very well. So let's move to the next part of the show. Dr. Thompson, in your I read one of your recent articles. In your article, you talk about you mentioned one particular intervention, which is the local economic development, which you talk about. You talk about it in three about it as in having 3 pillars. Can you explain this a little bit so that what's this idea of local economic development? And then what are these 3 pillars that you think can help, rejuvenate the local communities in the local areas?
In the national economy also. Well, first of all, congratulations. I'm impressed by the breadth and scope of your listeners. Looks like they're all over, not just within Ghana, but also outside. So that's good. It means you have global presence. And that's just a cross-section of viewers and listeners that you shared there. But I'll get back to that. But let me just put the 24-hour economy in context so that people know where we're coming from. The idea originated when we're preparing the 40-year National Development Plan. And so if you read the plan, you see that the 40-year National Development Plan was originally mentioned there as a strategy for transforming the Ghanaian economy. So yes, there will be 3 shifts, but even those who would work in the day shift will also benefit because we are trying to transform the whole economy. So jobs will be created across the spectrum of the Ghanaian economy. And in the process, we modernize and formalize and all that. Unfortunately, the new government did not pay much attention to the 40-year National Development Plan. And so when we prepared the 2020 2020 manifesto for the NDC, I contributed to that. So from that position, I then transferred the 24-hour economy into the manifesto, along with other very good recommendations from the 40-year National Development Plan, including a proposal to have an employment act. Currently, we have a labor act, which only deals with conditions of work. But Employment Act actually specifies the necessary conditions for creating opportunities to work in the first place. So 2 things. One deals with conditions of work. The other one deals with opportunities to work. And then it stayed, because the NDC didn't win, it stayed there in the manifesto until President Mahama breathed life into it, and then it caught on. But I'm happy to say that in the background, I've been working with the various members of the manifesto committee and even the communication team to better be able to sell and explain the 24-hour economy. It was a policy statement from the president, and I can assure you that since he made this policy statement, there's a special policy document, strategy document for the 24-hour economy has since been developed. And an implementation plan, as I speak with you, is also being developed. So it should be a relatively straightforward thing. Of course, when you develop a plan outside of government, it's different from what you see when you come into power. So you need to then assess the situation, modify your plan, but at least you have a plan, a framework to work with. So I thought I should provide that context, that the 24-hour economy, of course, as they said, is going to be a game changer, is going to be the road to economic transformation.
Okay, so
I'm sorry.
No, since we are there already, we might as well just deal with 24-hour economy, because I see that there are some segments of our listeners who seem to be excited about it. So let's spend some time on the 24-hour economy.
Sure.
The critics of the 24-hour economy say that the 24-hour economy is supposed to be an output and not and not an input as is being proposed. And the explanation that they give is that 24-hour economy would naturally evolve if some things in the economy, if your economy grows to some level, 24-hour economy just becomes a natural evolution of your economy. It is not a policy that you set up right now and implement and then it grows forth. What do you say to this?
Well, you can either induce it, depending on your sense of urgency, or you can let things take time to evolve, which will be forever. We don't have that luxury of waiting forever. There's a thing here. I wish I could find the time to read it for you. This was somebody's observation of the Ghanaian economy. And you remember that initially I kept telling you about the need for us to transform the economy. I'm looking for this description here on my computer of, oh yes, here it is. Let me read it to you. This is a British journalist's observation of Accra in 1874. That's the same year that Asante fought the Sagranti War. So this is way back. This is how he described Accra. The principal street of Accra is an amusing sight. Some effort appears to be made to keep it clean, and the salespeople sit upon little mats or upon low stools, which are used all over the country. They line both sides of the street and expose for sale every sort of article prized by the natives, and the goods being sold are contained in wooden trays everywhere in use here. This is in 1874. Now, when we were preparing the 40-year National Development Plan in 2016, 2017, this is what we picked up from the Daily Graphic, April 22, 2017. It says, this is the then mayor of Accra, Mohamed Ajesowa, has cautioned traders not to display their wares on the streets and walkways in the central business district. According to him, selling on the streets posed a threat to the lives of the community and the public. He further advised the traders not to display their wares beyond the red line demarcation by the Accra Metropolitan Assembly. So you see that in many respects, we've stood still. The economy has stood still. We remain highly informal. And the whole idea behind the 24-hour economy, and for that matter, the 40-year National Development Plan, is to transform and modernize the economy. And you can't transform by simply letting things happen. You're inducing it. So that's in the article I talked about the preconditions. So policy reforms, legislative reforms, all these things will have to be put in place by, and President Mahama has said that before the 24-hour economy can take off. Currently, yes, there are a few firms here and there that operate 24 hours, but the idea is to give them the incentive to even expand their operations. And the only way they can do that is, one, improving their operations, the way they operate, so that they reduce the cost of operations and become internationally competitive, and then also be able to export abroad. Currently, the opportunities for exports are so limited. I live here in Pretoria in South Africa, and when I go to the Ghanaian shop, some of the basic things that I expect that they would import from Ghana, for instance, plantain in Pretoria, is imported from Ecuador in Latin America instead of coming in from Ghana because it is so expensive. In fact, the cost of doing business, not just the cost of living, but also the cost of doing business in Ghana is just way too high. So all these things will have to be consciously used. You can't just say, okay, let things take their time. Then it's going to be another 100 years, 150 years before we find our way. And most of us would have died anyway. We want to see some progress in Ghana now before we move on. But yes, and this is what development economics is all about anyway, where government deliberately instigates change as opposed to waiting for change to take place. Now, with respect to local economic development, it is critical because local economies are the building blocks of the national economy. So if you want to transform the national economy, you should start with local economies. We have 261 district assemblies now, and no one even talks about them. We need to begin to address that. I've done extensive research on that for an organization called the UN Capital Development Fund. And so that's what the idea is based on. And there are three pillars. One is enterprise development. So we need to be able to stimulate business growth in all the 261 districts. The second one is infrastructure and spatial development. We need to provide the necessary infrastructure. And then in the paper itself, not the one I published, but the research paper I did, I go into different ways of financing infrastructure in local communities. There are about 6 of them. We can go through that. So number one is enterprise development. Number two is infrastructure and spatial. We don't hear that often when we talk about spatial development, but the two need to go together. Otherwise, the cost of providing infrastructure becomes too high. And we see that in Accra and other cities all the time, where human settlements are allowed to emerge in certain areas that they shouldn't have been. And then when we get ready to build a road, we have to pay people for them to move and demolish their buildings. The monies we use to demolish those buildings could have been used for something else, even have a longer road. In countries where they plan their communities well, they don't have that problem. And so a road that should cost maybe 1 million Ghana or 100 million Ghana cedis may actually end up costing 200 million Ghana cedis. The additional 100 million Ghana cedis is simply paying people to break down their houses. It makes no sense. And then the third pillar is social development, education, skills training, health, housing, public transportation. Too often we ignore the role of public transportation, for example, in labor productivity, how effective people are. But you live in Germany. I'm sure you're familiar with how efficient the public transport system is. You get home, you know exactly, you leave home, you know exactly when the train is going to show up, when you're going to get to work. We don't have that in Ghana. So people are living in places like Kaswa, and they leave home at 4 a.m. so that they take their children to school. And by the time they get to work at 9, 10, they're all exhausted. So the social aspects of it. The last research I did was in Agunas Redru in the central region. And I met with a number of businesses and business owners. One of them was a contractor, and he couldn't find the necessary skilled labor in Agunas Redru because most people have left. So just to summarize, the local economic development strategy, and there is a local economic development secretariat at the Ministry of Local Government, which is pretty much dysfunctional. It doesn't work. So the local economic development, then, the strategy is going to serve as the foundation of the 24-hour economy. So that you don't have to come to Accra to find a job. You can be in your community and be able to find a job either through small, medium-scale enterprises or large-scale enterprises in a very integrated way. But I'm really excited. I'm looking forward to the opportunity for us to put this visionary plan. This is Nkrumahist in terms of scope and depth. I saw that one of your viewers had Kwame Nkrumah's picture there, and I was really excited over that. But it is Nkrumahist in the sense that Yentijai, we're not going to say no because someone disputes that. No. A lot of people disputed Nkrumah's vision and commitment, and yet he managed to. Ghana at the time was only 6 million people, and we made history in Africa. I think we can make history again with GM next time around.
Okay, so since we already introduced this topic of lead, there's this mindset that
yes.
One of the things that seem to be missing in the Ghanaian context is the local ownership of their spaces, whereby people in local areas just look up to external intervention. Yes. And so by external intervention, they are either looking up to the central government or yes. the DC or the MC or some other
the MP,
or the MP.
Yeah. Yes.
And nobody takes care of their local spaces. Yes. So effectively, they do not own the spaces that they live in, which makes them feel responsible for contributing to their development. And yes. in so doing, it creates a situation where people seem to be irresponsible. And we have created, in my previous life, before I moved to Europe, I worked in development practice with NGOs. And my observation after living those NGOs was that I felt that we had created what I call a dependency syndrome, whereby everybody was looking for a savior, Father Christmas from somewhere. And the people who seemed to complain the most were the people who got more attention, rather than looking at the people who can tout their contribution the most, who can then attract intervention to help them grow, what they have already started. What is your take on that?
Well, I wouldn't say a lot of the people are actually victims of failed policies at the national level. So they are victims. It's not as if they're not trying. But over the years, we've had a predatory central government that simply takes monies from the local economies and doesn't put back enough. Sometimes it even deprives them of it. So we have the District Assembly's Common Fund, which by the Constitution, portions of which are supposed to be disbursed to the assemblies. They are not disbursed to them. We have something called deductions at source. It's one of the biggest obstacles to local economic development, where some businesses in Accra are given a contract to do procurement for district assemblies without any input whatsoever of the district assemblies. There was a time when they bought television sets for schools from Accra, and some of them were given to schools where they didn't even have electricity, but someone in Accra was buying television sets for them. We just recently had something called DRIP, District Road Improvement Program, that just emerges out of nowhere, and no one is even thinking about how to run those tractors. I'm on a platform with a friend of mine who told me that they are now begging people to collect money to buy diesel for the graders and tractors that they bought from. So everything has become politics and exhibitionist. And these are all things that we need to address. We need to empower local communities. You don't have to come to Accra to come and register your business or wait for some. These things can easily be done in the comfort of your home. So yes, real decentralization will give local economies and local governments the freedom. Again, everything, of course, we don't have enough time to go through everything that needs to be done, but I can assure you, as I said, the strategy document has been prepared and is being reviewed by JM himself. The implementation plan itself is being prepared now as I speak with you, and at the appropriate time, he will like to implement that. And of course, it's going to be a living document. So it will. I would love nothing more than to see a dynamic and rapidly growing Ghanaian economy. And being here, I'm glad that I've been here because I work. People were asking why is he not in open politics and so forth and so. That's because I work with international organizations that do not allow you to do open politics. But that doesn't prevent you from contributing to policy development back home. And so I do that quite a bit without necessarily going on radio. Those days when we used to run our mouths on radio are kind of over now. Now there's a new generation of young people. And I'm always impressed to see all these young people, both male and female, very brilliant, making very intelligent contributions. And it's good to sit back. So I'm a bit of an old man when it comes to that now. But wherever I am, I'm contributing to Ghana's development. And certainly I've also suggested to JM himself that we should have strategic collaboration or cooperation with South Africa when if and when he's elected. Because South Africa is one of the oldest economies in Africa. People don't know that. They tend to think of South Africa since 1994. But their central bank, for example, has been around since 1920. Ford Motor Company has been operating here since 1920. And it's a highly, highly sophisticated economy with a lot of experience that we can draw from. So while I'm here, I'm also talking to people that we can engage once opportunity comes, so that we can also invite them to Ghana to share some of their secrets. As you know, South Africa has the largest, industrial economy in Africa, the most sophisticated. Until recently, it was the largest economy in Africa. And then they allowed Doomsaw to cripple them. Fortunately, they solved Doomsaw in April or thereabout, and they haven't had Doomsaw since then. And according to the IMF, they will regain their #1 position starting next year. So again, it shows you the importance of zero Doomsaw in industrial development, and for that matter, 23. Yeah, we need zero Doomsaw. We cannot. There's no way we can transform our economy with even 1 hour of Doomsaw. It has to be zero. You live in Germany. When was the last time you had Doomsaw in Germany?
I don't remember.
Exactly. So Germany is the largest economy in Europe. It's the largest. So we need to aspire. We need to aspire to higher things. If you do find the time, or your colleagues, or your listeners find the time, just Google Africa at night from space, and then Google Europe at night from space, and see the contrast. You will weep. You will weep. And we sit on so much potential, and Africa is so dark from space. And Europe is just glittering all over the place. We need to close that gap. And I think we can start from Ghana, really.
We can start from Ghana, and we can start with the 24-hour economy.
Sure.
Yes. So, I mean, there are quite a number of things that I would have wanted us to discuss, but I'm afraid we have run out of time very quickly. I would have wanted us to discuss the local government finance bill, which you seem to be quite passionate about.
Yes.
I would also have wanted to talk about the competition law, which you think that we need. I would also have wanted to talk about the consumer protection law, which you think that is something that we need. Yeah. Yes. Then also you seem to suggest that our Procurement Act, Petroleum Revenue Management Act, Public Finance Management Act, all of those things need some kind of revision to be able to fit to our times. But more importantly, I would want to read this paragraph from your article. You see, the wider framework for all of this must be an ambitious national productivity development agenda led by the Management Development and Productivity Institute across government and private sector under the direction of the President's office. This is something that I wanted us to discuss extensively. So as you can see, there are quite a number of there's a lot of grounds to cover with you. I'm not actually sure that I'm done with the 24-hour economy yet. I would have wanted us to delve more into, how do you call it, operationalizing it, so that we can get a concept right. It seems to be something that a lot of people are excited about, but they don't know what it means to operationalize it. And then probably deal with the costing issues, because Ghanaians seem to be living through a scarred moment where they were promised 24 free SHS, and when they asked how are you going to fund it, they said, oh, we'll get the money. Now we've gotten to know that the money was nowhere and they don't have the money at all. So Ghanaians seem to want to know, when you make very good promises, have you thought about the finances? Where do you intend to get the money from? How do you finance this? So unfortunately, we would not be able to continue any further than that. But like I said, the grounds left to be covered is quite extensive. So I am making a public to you that you rejoin us soon, so that we can be able to cover the grounds and to be able to answer some of the lingering questions that are bothering our listeners, and that would also help our listeners to be able to make informed decisions as they go to cast their votes come December 7th. So thank you very much, Dr. Nii Moi Thompson, for joining us today. We are most grateful for making the time to join us today. And like I said, I'm making a public request. I don't want to put you on the spot, but I'm sure that my viewers would appreciate it when that you rejoin us sometime soon.
No problem. I'm actually going to Ghana to go and vote. So after the vote, I'll get in touch with you, and then we can, as back we used to say, rap and reason. That's what we used to say. We can rap and reason.
Wonderful. Yes. So thank you very much for joining us, and we wish you all the best, and enjoy the rest of your night. So if you just joined us, unfortunately, you've just missed the show, but we have been having a very exciting discussion with Dr. Nii Moi Thompson. Dr. Nii Moi Thompson was an advisor. He's a renowned economist globally. He's a former economic advisor to President John Dramani Mahama, and also the former Director General of the National Development Planning Commission of Ghana. And he's also very instrumental in the drawing of the 24-hour economic policy of the NDC, and also the 40-year development plan of Ghana. And so we say a very big thank you to everybody who has joined us today, to our listeners on Second Information Center in Teteli, Northern Ghana, our listeners on High FM 93.7 in Achimai region, to our listeners on the King's Radio in Accra, and also to all our viewers and listeners on all our social media platforms. This has been another edition of MyView Show, here live on Today Ghana News TV. Until next week, same time, when we join you with another exciting edition, we say a very big thank you to you. Stay blessed, stay safe. God bless you. God bless our homeland, Ghana. Good evening to you.
The country where I come from, the truth is an irony. Just like animal farm, justice mean inequity. So who go say the truth? Who go say the truth? Christian can say silence, Islamic leaders silence. Kings and queens